5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Full course yellow is deployed. Full course yellow is deployed.
Yes, hello everybody, and welcome to another edition of Full Course Yellow. We're back after a week's break. Had some things on last week, so we took a bit of a week's break. So, but we are back again, and what was turning out to be a slow news week has suddenly not become a slow news week. We'll have more a little bit later on about the impending departure of Adrian Newey from Red Bull. It is in fact official now that it is in fact happening. So we'll be talking about that as well. We'll also possibly have a bit of a chat about Motorsport Australia. I mean, so will they be setting up the GoFund page themselves fairly soon because they've lost money. Times are tough. They're going to be out the front of the offices with the rattling the tins fairly soon. Things have got terribly bad. But anyway, joining us on the program tonight, we've got some of the usual suspects. Joining us is Peter Johnson. We've got Richard Outram, and from Queensland, Mr. Mark Jones. Good evening, all.
Good evening.
How are we all?
All right. Yep.
How are you? Peter and Richard. Yep. How are we all?
I'm good now. I'm good. Now I've got it off mute.
Yeah, well, yes, you are still freezing. Your picture is still freezing, but your sound is okay. But
looks
apart
great
from
that, here. Don't know what the problem is. Maybe I'll need a world-class F1 designer to help me.
You probably need world class. I was listening to an American podcast early this morning, and they were pointing out. They said, "Look, we're really sorry if there's a bit of a problem with ours. We've just got ourselves a new internet provider, and we're only getting 765 megabytes up and back. 700. We're only getting 7. It's like, third world country. I mean, that's how sad. But yes, if you haven't heard, Adrian Newey, it is official now. Adrian Newey is leaving. The announcement came out at about 7 o'clock our time tonight. A statement from Red Bull. Won't go into I've got it up on the In Pit Lane Facebook page, and I'm sure that it's in a lot of other places if you haven't read it. Quite a long statement from both Adrian Newey and from Christian Horner as well. Just pointing out, and all saying very much no. Be interesting to see what comes out of it, because it seems to be all very amicable, and Adrian is just saying, look, I'm looking for new challenges. I do like the fact, and if anybody from Midweek Motorsport, John Hindhoff and the crew are watching now, you will no doubt be absolutely delighted with the news. And of course, the press release started with a quote from Adrian Newey, started with the words, "Ever since I was a small boy." That's a running gag on Midweek Motorsport on Radio Le Mans. So as soon as I saw it, I laughed that and thought, John and Nick and the team will absolutely love that. But just saying that he really was looking for some new challenges. Pointed out that Christian wasn't just a boss; he was a good friend and a family friend. And Christian said the same thing, that they were very, the families were very close, and so there didn't seem to be any sort of animosity there. And the fact that it was he's going to be hanging around, he will be debuting the new Red Bull hypercar, the track car, at the Goodwood Festival of Speed, and he will apparently attend Miami, and will be attending other races as well. But basically, he's sort of on limited duty now in terms of designs for the new car in the future. So he's basically on gardening leave, I suppose. But the fact that he's still turning up at various events is probably a good sign. So, Pete, it's interesting because Pete and I were chatting about it just quickly before we came on. And Pete, you saying from his book that he was very much he was very much exhibiting a sense of frustration with the limitations that he was under. with Formula One and the restrictive regulations, you'd think that there's talk that he's going to Aston Martin. You would imagine that Aston Martin could provide him with a lot of very exciting opportunities if he wants to take some of these designs a bit further.
With road cars and things, and
Yeah.
And he's also been involved in the past with America's Cup yachts and things. So, but yeah, in his book, he said that he finds the restrictions are getting more and more, like they're knobbling him. He felt restricted more and more and more. And then he said elsewhere that particularly the 26 regulations, knobbling. I think he's actually said at one point that the electric component of the car is going to be more rather than less, and then it's going to be restrict.
It's interesting because if you have a look at the ticker running underneath us at the moment, that Honda have basically announced that in terms of all their engine development, and that's the other interesting part of it is Honda, of course, who will be with Aston Martin. Are pointing out that all the engine development they're doing at the moment is basically 100% focused on the electric component of the engine, because it'll essentially be a 50-50 split. That's what the regulations are sort of pushing, and Honda are sort of saying, look, we believe that we've gone about as far as we can go in terms of the internal combustion engine. There's not a whole lot more we can do in terms of getting more power and better reliability out of it. That will remain pretty, the ICE engine will be pretty much the same as it is now, but it'll be the electric component that's really going to sort of push things. And they're saying that it'll be about a 50-50 power split. And they're sort of saying, well, if we can get more out of the electric side, then that could be the advantage that we've got. So that's where we're totally focusing our attention at the moment. So is it going to be on that electric side?
And Adrian Newey has expressed his displeasure that there's going to be more of an influence over on the electric side rather than the internal combustion side.
Yeah, well, he's been very frustrated. I mean, a lot of the designers, particularly the older ones. I mean, I saw an interview with Gordon Murray as well, who was just saying, he was saying basically, thank God I'm out of Formula One, because he said the cars are huge. He said they're ugly. He said there's very little in the way of sort of innovation that you can push now, because everything's so very tightly controlled. He said it was fairly boring. He said that there was much more. He felt there was much more sort of scope for creativity in doing sort of track cars and road cars and possibly even things like like Le Mans hypercars than there was in Formula One anymore. And of course, the Valkyrie, Aston Martin are working on the track version of the Valkyrie, and the rumor is that they will have a car on display, if not actually doing some demonstration laps at this year's Le Mans 24 Hour, which is only sort of a bit over a month away now. So we might see that
6 weeks or so.
Yeah, basically. So it'll be interesting. That seems to be a lot of engineers and even a lot of drivers are sort of saying that this is Formula One's getting a bit dreary, and in terms of innovation and sort of the future, there's a lot to be said for sports car racing at the moment, and what sort of input Adrian Newey will have into Aston Martin's car should he go there, if that's where he's going, or whether he just wanders off and decides to design some more boats.
And apparently he's got for his own personal use, he's got a boat company in England designing a yacht for him because he wants to go around the world or something on a yacht.
I could think of nothing worse. I really could. I've got friends. I actually do have friends who have gone who have done that, and it's like, weeks and weeks on end. You don't see another person. You don't see just out on the sea, and it's kind of like that'd drive me insane. But anyway, that's the thing. But anyway, we shall welcome some of the regulars to the program. Phil's tapping. No, your tapping time is over, Phil. Said that. And incidentally, we do have some of your photos on this week's show, but don't blame us. Blame the Victorian flag marshalling team who brought them in for last night. But anyway, we do have some. For our guest tomorrow night on In Pit Lane is Suze Arnott from the Victorian flag marshalling team. Has a lot of good things to say too about some surprising things in terms of the sudden influx that they've had. And this was mentioned last night and during the members forum for Motorsport Australia as well, which has just gone up on YouTube, where Andrew Fraser, the president of Motorsport Australia, was saying that one of the good bits of news last night was that they've had quite the influx of young people who want to be marshals and want to be trainees. And Suze was saying that herself last night. She said, and particularly young women. So this is great. This is really good news. So
Awesome.
so congratulations to that. Box. Good day, Box. Good evening to you as well. Our old mate Richard Catchlove is joining us as well for Sports Sedan Driver.
Hello, Richard.
Yes,
Good
good day.
evening.
Yes, good
Long time no see.
Yes, so good day to Richard there, and working on hoping he bought a yacht. So that might be his plan. That might be his plan. Just take a year off and shoot around.
A hyper yacht. Has there been discussion on that?
Well, he did the America's Cup yacht, didn't he? He did.
And he's done for Sail GP. He's designed.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, and by geez, some of those things are pretty wild too.
Have you seen those hydroplane ones?
Wow. Oh God, they're unbelievable.
Incredible.
They climbed a little bit too, so that's a bit different.
Yep, Russell Clark. Good day to Russell. Mad Cow Mark is joining us again. No worries. We'll forgive you this time. Mark, good day to Jimmy as well. Jimmy K is joining us as well. We've got there's Phil. Give the mighty Suze the go ahead. Go Suze the go ahead. This is good. So got there. So good day, Richard. How are you? Okay. Yes, Richard agreed with us. Could not be less interested in being on a yacht around the world. Yeah, that's my thing. It's like people who go on cruises. I know people who love going on cruises, and I think it would be the most terrifyingly boring thing in the world. But anyway, so so interesting. It's like how much of all of the turmoil at Red Bull has, if anything, has played into this, but it certainly hasn't been mentioned as in his statement. It seems, as I said, but that's the official statement. Whether stuff comes further down the track. Now, the interesting thing, I suppose, is going to be whether this affects one young Max Verstappen anymore, who has apparently been offered an extraordinary amount of money to wander over and replace Mr. Hamilton at Mercedes. So this could be the first of the dominoes to fall, really. I mean, if he now that Adrian's gone, will Max be more likely to move? And if and they certainly seem to be keen to get rid of Helmut as well, Helmut Marko. So this could be a major change for the dominant team in Formula One at the moment. It could be like the Formula One equivalent of Erebus, where they just totally dominate and win the championship and win everything, and then this time next year it's like they have none of their star drivers are left. They don't have their gun designer anymore, and they've lost their star driver.
And they're sponsored by they're sponsored by Marks and Spencer or something.
Yes, or Prime Energy Drinks, probably by Logan Paul.
This could be an opportunity for Gunter Steiner to set up a travelling Wilburys style Formula One team of older gentlemen from other teams.
Yes, it's like the League of Sophisticated Gentlemen. Like the garagists are back. But Gunter, incidentally, taking Haas to court, says that he's owed some money. So he's taking Haas to court at the moment. So that'll be something to look forward to. So not a lot happening on the track in the world of Formula One, but by God, there's plenty happening off the track as well. We've got so is Miami this weekend?
This weekend, yep,
It is
this weekend. Yep.
So it's going to be interesting because we've got the Miami Grand Prix with the time zone over there is sort of what about is it 4
6
or 5
o'clock in the morning?
Six in the morning, and then straight afterwards, you can flip over or if you're watching Foxtel, they'll probably do it themselves. Flip over and watch Cam Waters running in the truck race at NASCAR truck race at Kansas. So he's running there this weekend. So that'll be a big early morning for those who are either just getting home from the night before or jumping up early. So
it's Monday morning, so
well, you can have trust me, but you can have a big night out on a Sunday. It's been known to happen back in the day. Not nowadays, that's for sure. One, I don't have the energy, and two, I don't have the money.
When I was a little boy. Sorry, what was the phrase again? The midweek motorsport phrase?
When I was a little boy.
Yes, ever since I was a small child.
Ever since I was a small child.
Yeah, so that was interesting. So that's Formula One news. So Miami coming there. The other interesting thing that came out of Red Bull was a quote attributed to Christian Horner, saying that basically that despite all that's gone on so far this year, that as far as he's concerned, Daniel Ricciardo is still the favourite for a drive in the main team for next year. And I suppose if they lost Max, they'd be wanting an experienced driver, and Daniel. So this could be a real boost for Daniel. If they just wanted, depending on what they do with the second seat, in terms of saying, well, okay, we want an experienced driver, and it depends on what Carlos Sainz does as well, I suppose. The talk is that he will probably end up at Audi Sauber as Nico Hülkenberg has done.
Well, the last Grand Prix, both he and Yuki, I think the last two Grand Prix, he and Yuki qualified about 10th and 11th, and that's consistently where Yuki has been qualifying. So that's about, I think, where the car is. And Daniel was well up in the points when he got run into in China. So
yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, and Daniel, of course, like this is almost his second home, or I suppose Circuit of the Americas is almost his second home Grand Prix because he's such an America-phile. He loves America. America loves him. He's one of the big attractions over there. He does. I haven't seen yet, but he usually does all the talk. He usually pops up with Jimmy Kimmel and all of the crew, the Steve Colbert and all the rest of it, and charms everybody with the $1 million smile and the laid back, laconic Aussie humour, and he just seems to go down very, very well in America, and that could be one of the reasons that the Red Bull would like to keep him around as well, because he's really, really good for marketing.
Can you imagine if Daniel actually ends up at Red Bull? I swear to God, I would follow him round a casino and bet on whatever he bet on.
Yes. Yeah, you think so? I mean, talk about falling on your feet. That would be. Richard's saying, well, what's happening with Sainz? Well, as I said, we don't know for sure. The rumor is going around that that Audi are very, very keen on him. Basically, especially because of the connection with his old man in the rallying days, that they've been very keen to have him on board. As I said, they've got Hülkenberg already, which was an interesting pickup. So it'll be interesting to see. So that's sort of the German component sort of taken care of. So they might be keen to pick up Carlos and see how he goes. But I imagine, especially if Max decides to leave, I imagine Red Bull would be very, very keen to get him as well. But I think the attraction is it's the same, like for whether it's for Lewis or for Max or anybody else in there. I think that or Adrian Newey is that connection with a major manufacturer, like a proper car manufacturer, an Audi, a Mercedes Benz, a Ford, a Honda, somebody like that. I think there's great synergy in that you can become sort of the brand ambassador for life, and it can be a good little gig for you, and I think that would probably attract Max as well, because apart from in terms of his long term future, to be able to say that if I'll sign a 10-year deal or something with Mercedes Benz, because they're not going anywhere. Even if they got out of Formula One, they're still going to be in sort of in road cars, and he could. There, I think as Gerard is saying there, like Daniel on a 1 year maybe. That sounds to me like that it would be the sort of deal that they might do just to get them through to 2026. But the other thing is, of course, if they're going through to 26, they've got all the new regulations, and this is another case where an experienced driver would be really, really handy to have someone when you're developing a brand new engine and brand new regulations, to have somebody who's done an awful lot of miles. I think that's why Fernando has been re-signed at Aston Martin, because it's like they know that this new car is coming, and they want someone there who can give them that sort of experienced feedback that they're not going to get from a younger driver.
I wonder if Audi grabbed hold of Carlos Sainz, whether they might be tempted to put in a stronger connection with Sayat and Capra.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting thing, isn't it? Because they've got all of that. It would certainly help them with the marketing there as well. I mean, in terms of that sort of Latin American sort of Spanish
Volkswagen
connection. So. And I think that's the thing. There's all the different areas that you can go into. There's also, I mean, for someone like Fernando, and once again for Adrian Newey, with Aston Martin, going back to Le Mans, when the Formula One career is, over, he could just sort of say, well, I wouldn't mind going and picking up another Le Mans with Aston Martin. He could stay with them, and Adrian could have an input into the next generation of the Valkyrie for racing as well. So, he's got all those that synergy with the road cars, and that I think will attract a lot of people. But what's this? Daniel has brought 35 million to RB. Well, it hasn't come from this. So it must be through sponsor, through his attraction for people. Because Daniel wouldn't have that. I doubt Daniel would have that money, but I think that's part of the appeal for Visa, because being an American company, that Daniel being there probably is something that they'd like to be associated with him, because he's just so popular. He's popular all around the world, but he's certainly very popular in the States. But anyway, that's the world of Formula One. Anything else we want to talk about in that part of the sport? If not, we shall move on to. We won't spend too much time on it. Motorsport Australia announcing a substantial operating loss last year of just over $1 million. They had their motorsport forum last night with Andrew Fraser and the new CEO Sunil Vora, talking about the situation. Been a lot of sort of like throwing up their hands in horror, and this is the end of the world, and but if you have a look, the frightening thing, and it's going to be true of so many things at the moment, is if you have a look at like all of the figures are actually pretty good until you get to the insurance. And the insurance has the cost of the insurance. If you put the increased cost of insurance, if you took that off the figures, they're basically at the same point that they were last year, just a little bit worse off. But in terms of the big cost, it was insurance, and this is going to happen to every form of sport, not just motorsport, and also to other events as well. In fact, up your way, Mark, I heard one of the most popular music venues, live music venues in Brisbane. They've been around for many, many years. They announced today that they're going to have to shut their doors. They said they've had a massive increase. They've had a 35% increase in patronage over the last couple of years. So it's not that people don't want it. They just said they simply cannot afford the high cost of the public liability insurance anymore. Also, kids aren't drinking anymore. So they said the kids are coming and listening to the music, and they're just sitting there and drinking water. So that's not helping matters much at all.
We know why.
Yeah. So well, yes.
Sorry,
but yeah,
Keep
but
going.
I think that, I think the I think this is something that we're going to have a look. Now, the interesting thing is Sunil Vora, the CEO. If you have a look at the CEOs that have been there before, or with a couple of exceptions, they have come from either within motorsport administration or in sports administration. Like, Eugene Aroca had a very, very long and substantial career in the AFL at both Collingwood and North Melbourne before he came to Motorsport Australia, or Cairns it was when he joined. You had Greg Swan was also there for a while, who was heavily involved in the AFL. So you've had people. Now, I really thought that that would be the sort of person that they were looking for. Instead, they've got Sunil Vora, who has no sports marketing or sports administration experience, but what he does have is a long career in insurance. That's his background, and he pointed that out last night. That he speaks the language, he knows sort of how to deal with these people, and he's hoping that he's able to put people's mind at rest within the insurance industry and do what is needed to try and keep those costs under control. But I can't see unless we have a situation like they had in New Zealand, where in New Zealand they essentially just nationalised it in terms of sport and that sort of thing. All sport in New Zealand now has a national insurance thing. There's a levy which is paid. Every spectator pays part of a levy. Every player, every sports administration group, they all pay a levy. It's a no fault. It's a bit like like down here with Vic
already
Roads.
have a scheme like that in Australia. We already have a scheme like that in Australia.
Well, we don't.
TAC.
GIS.
Oh yeah, that one too.
Yeah, well, yes, that's right. And that's been, as you well know, Pete, that's been an enormous success.
Yeah.
Without any corruption at all. But the one in New Zealand has the one in New Zealand has been a great success, because they were in the situation at one stage where they just couldn't get marshals because the marshals couldn't get insurance. Marshals, there was a case over there where a marshal got individually sued for something that he did or didn't do at the track, and the payout was enormous. And so the marshals over there just said, "Okay, that's it. We can't. We're not going to take this risk anymore." You had rugby competitions that had to, particularly junior rugby competitions, that had to be shut down because of the injuries that were involved in playing rugby over there. And of course, once the holy grail of rugby in New Zealand was under attack, somebody had to do something, and eventually they came up with what seems to be a really good plan. I don't know, perhaps Jimmy or someone will be able to tell us how it does work over there. But from what I've seen, the interesting thing is I saw a paper here, I think written by someone here, who basically said it simply will never happen in Australia because the insurance companies here are just way too powerful, and if if the government put up their hand and said, okay, we're going to bring in a New Zealand style scheme, the insurance companies would absolutely scream blue murder, just like the mining companies did with the resources tax, and they sunk that, and they'd probably sink this as well. The Monster logo says if all the kids play football like it now, I'm not sure what not sure what that means, but anyway. So, but it'll be interesting. Now, Sunil Vora will be our guest on In Pit Lane in not next week, but the week after, May the 16th. On the program, I'm going to give over pretty much the whole show to him because there's so many. So, if you've got questions, any of our Full Course Yellow family out there, if you want to, if you've got questions, anybody watching that that you'd like us to raise with Sunil Vora, by all means send them in. I mean, he answered quite a few last night, but you don't know sort of how many of the tough questions were sort of pushed aside, and in terms of because he handled everything pretty well. But it'd be interesting to see what. Interesting to see what questions we do get from people in terms of what they would like to ask him when we have him on the show coming up.
Is Targa Racing permanently dead?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah, well, I think that they and I think this is part as part of the insurance thing. I mean, with all of the, with all of the, and it might turn out with like a whole bunch of other forms of the sport as well. They just look at. I mean, motorcycle drag racing in New South Wales disappeared for a big slab of last year because they just simply could not get affordable insurance. And Motorcycling Australia has said on a national level, they negotiated a new contract for this year to get insurance, but it was once again with a massive increase. But it was only for 1 year, and they've said if they had the same situation again next year, it may well be just prohibitively expensive because they said they couldn't find it. They had to go back to their old. The old insurer was apparently the only insurance company that would take them because all the other insurance companies said no, it's too dangerous. It's just we're not going to even consider. Doesn't matter how much you pay us. We're not even going to consider insuring you. And they said, well, if that's the situation next year, and their current insurer, if they had a bad year this year, and the current insurer said, no, we're not doing. What happens then? If you can't find an insurer, then you don't run. And that's the end of motorcycle racing.
Oh yeah, and then we've got to be aware that the increasing awareness of CTE in contact sports is just going to. I mean, of course, it's an issue for motorsport as well, but it's less of an issue for motorsport than it is for the various footballs. So, if it gets too expensive for them, then I can see that will be the point where government becomes.
Yeah, you'd have to think.
If it affects football, boom, they'll be.
That's going to be the thing. I mean, it's like well, it's not. There's no. I'm sorry, guys. There's nothing we can do about it. And I mean, it's even sports like cricket. I mean, look at the Will Prokofsky situation. I mean, the guy's just got to just sneeze and he gets a concussion, and he's still playing. He's still very keen to continue playing. But almost, he comes back and obviously an enormously talented player, but every time and it's not just getting hit in the head with a ball. I mean, he's fallen over for fielding or tripped over in the shower. Something's happened and he's banged his head and he's out with concussion again. So we've just seen a couple of footballers, local footballers here. I mean, that's one of the Collingwood players about a week ago retired all of a sudden, fairly young because of concussion issues, and that's going to happen. That's going to happen a lot.
Just getting back to the Targa thing, I read earlier this week that in January they're hosting a Targa Academy event where there'll be a lot of time spent in the classroom over a weekend in January, and then the Targa, I think it's Mount Buller, is scheduled to go ahead in November next year. Yeah.
Yeah, well, hopefully they will do that. I mean, because most of the Targa stuff that's running at the moment, I think there's actually one running in East Gippsland this weekend up around Lakes Entrance, and that's all being run, I think, under AASA regulations. Now, the interesting thing is, I don't know what the situation with AASA is. They seem to be managing quite well, but then you have in drag racing, you have the IHRA. They had the problems with the motorcycle thing at Sydney Dragway. They just couldn't. They didn't have any motorsport, and it could even be like for groups like AASA and IHRA, it could be the situation we have with our own insurance, which essentially says that we're just not. We can't really send people to AASA meetings in terms of crew because our insurance doesn't cover it, because the insurance company says, well, hang on, are they an FIA approved designated motorsport organisation under the auspices of Motorsport Australia? So no, they're the opposition. And they go, well, then you're not really, you don't go there. It's got to have that FIA stamp of approval and that Australian Sports Commission stamp of approval, or they're just not accepting it. As far as they're concerned, they're an outlaw mud show.
Well, if you consider that insurance going up by a third. Now, I'll just take the last Excel club meeting, which usually has 30 plus cars on the grid, just had over 20 cars on the grid, which is like sort of unheard of. And if the prices go up by, 20, 30%, I wonder how many are the backmarker nuffers like myself are going to be able to afford it.
But that's the problem, I mean, for everybody at the moment. I mean, it doesn't matter what you're doing. I mean, all the people who are complaining about Motorsport Australia and the prices going up, I mean, we're all, somebody said, oh, look, there's one of the, apart from insurance, look how much, extra they spent on travel and accommodation. Well, guess what? Travel and accommodation have gone up by an enormous amount. I mean, we're going up to Winton for... We were pricing a live stream, a possible live stream coming up later in the year. And just for the accommodation, we needed to get 8 people up there up to Winton for 3 days. And the cost of that was going to be, just that alone was going to be close to $5,000. It's crazy.
Mm.
I think we'll be staying home and just watching free-to-air television, I think.
Yes, well, that's if anybody's, because this is the problem. They said, once Peter Adderton was, jumping up and down, Peter Adderton, who of course is not making any comments at all about motorsport at all. He's not doing it. He's not, I'm never talking about motor racing again. I'm completely out of it. I'm not. Anyway, he's been back on the social medias again.
He doth protest too much.
and he was saying about motorsport's losing sponsors because they don't treat their sponsors well, and they don't, but everybody's losing sponsors. Everybody's losing advertising. Ask any commercial television network. Ask any commercial radio network. Any newspaper or magazine. Ask us on In Pit Lane. It's just on Channel 31. Channel 31 have more than halved the amount that it used to. It used to cost about $350 to get a single 30-second ad on In Pit Lane. Doesn't cost that now. So it doesn't cost anything like that now, and that's true of right across the board. They've just had to slash the prices so much that it's almost you've got to sell. So they're lucky. They can sell over the course of a week, they can sell hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of ads. And even if they're charging $45 an ad for them, they're selling 100 a week, and that's fine. We have one 30-second ad that we can sell, and if we sell it for $45, that doesn't even pay for half the pizzas, let alone.
And we've lost Brett.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
I'm
Yes.
wondering if the sensors have just reached through and hacked him.
Yeah,
And
we
said,
can't
nope,
have.
you're complaining. We're switching you off.
It's all about the insurance and nationalising the insurance.
Yeah. Oh, that's what it is. Insurance
Yeah.
companies have hacked Brett.
Yeah. Well, you know what they like in America? The medical insurance company. Oh, they're vicious. But
That's a horrible thing.
we're waiting for Brett. I hope he comes back soon.
Well, I've had a bit
Mark,
of a
yes.
weekend. I mean,
Yes, tell us.
we've been racing the last 2 weekends up here in Queensland. In fact, weekend just gone, we had 2 events on at the same time. We had Queensland Raceway 2 weeks ago for a state championship event, which was fantastic. We had lots of really good racing there. And weekend just gone, there was Lakeside for a AASA aligned race meeting, and at Morgan Park in Warwick, I got to go to see historic Warwick, and our ostensibly number 2 historic race meeting for the year, but we had the Heritage Touring Cars along this year to historic Warwick, so it's bumped up its profile a bit, and had some fantastic racing. A shout out to Brian Henderson and David Toe and Kyla Alford in their Nissan Turbos, and David's BMW, who put on some cracking racing in the Heritage Touring Cars. And shout out. I've forgotten his name now. Damn it. We had one of the competitors was unable to take part after falling ill. So pass on. Best wishes on speedy recovery there.
Mark, just on historic stuff, I was wondering if anyone saw Jordan Roddy blasting around Long Beach in Sebastian Bourdais' old IndyCar. Really good.
Awesome.
Yeah, he's come a long way from carrying the desk in on in-pit lane every week, hasn't he? Part of the in-pit lane. Geordie, part of the in-pit lane for Emily. I saw that on Racer magazine. Sort of, Australian driver drives, and I thought, who's the Australian? And suddenly, Australian driver, Jordan Roddy. I went, bloody yeah. So he's doing very well.
Oh, yes. Don't, Mark. There are 2 Aston Martins associated with Jordan at the moment,
and the Cadillac,
which is still going. One of them, his pride and joy, has been sold to America again, probably to go in a glass case. So he's got so many fingers and so many pies. You think he was Peter the Pie Man. He knows everyone now. I mean, here he is at Goodwood at the at the gala ball with. Here we are with Michael, Nigel Mansell, Jackie Stewart, and anybody, and other list of luminaries. Doing well.
And good on him.
Yes, very good.
I just on the subject of Jaguar, you see the
bubble.
I've reconnected the camera, and now the bloody reactions have turned on again. Yes. But there actually, I will let you know in terms of reaction. I did find one that I really liked. There you go. How funky is that?
Lasers. Laser, if you like Austin Powers.
Pew pew.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool. I really like that. But it needs to have the sound effects with it as well. Terms of just back on the insurance for a second, as Russell is saying, perhaps look at Speedway Australia's insurance system. Ooh. Yeah, I'm not sure how what they've come up with. It is a very restrictive insurance there. Yet again, in our case, and Karting Australia is very similar. We just even as media, we can't get anywhere near the paddocks and some of the areas for if we want to film at Speedway, because it's like no, sorry guys, you're not a part of the insurance, and you can't come in. So that's what's making it really hard. Like at the Bend, for instance, I wanted to go and do a story when we go on the break in a couple of weeks' time. I wanted to head over and do a story on racing at the Bend, and the first thing they said was, "Well, we need to see your public liability insurance, and we need cover letters, and we need this, and we need that." And in the end, I went, too much of a hassle, won't do it. So if it's at the Bend, we can't cover it basically, and that's the same with some of the Speedway stuff that we've done. It's like, we'll go in and we'll do some interviews in the paddock, and it's like, no, you won't. But anyway, so that's there. We might take there's Roy's joined us again. Roy needed approval from each Speedway president before he was allowed into the pits for video. So that was, at least you got them. The last time, we were okay. We were okay at Nyora. We were okay at but the last time we went to a bigger meet, like a sprint car meeting out at Avalon, and this was quite a few years ago. They just said, "No, sorry guys, you can't go in there because you're not covered by our insurance. The insurance doesn't cover media." So we need to cite some pretty hefty personal injury and public liability insurance before we. Now we do have that stuff through RMITV, but I certainly don't want to be testing it, and I don't want to be annoying them, every 5 minutes, going back to RMITV every week and saying, "Hey guys, we need a new cover letter to cover whatever." But anyway, we'll work that out. Anybody else got anything? Oh, that's what I was going to ask you, Mark. Speaking of the stuff in Queensland, what was that at one of the meetings that you attended where I saw, speaking of old cars, where I saw footage of speaking of Jaguars, an orange Jaguar?
Indeed it was. Yeah, the Mark Frenouth had his other Jaguar. He seems to have acquired a couple of, like, he's already got and has had for a while the Group U ex McCormack Jaguar, and he used to race the Gary Scott Jaguar sports sedan himself. He got it. I think he may have even owned it at the time that Gary Scott was racing.
Yeah, I think he did. Yes.
Yeah, so that came out for a couple of runs. Unfortunately, it didn't run as cleanly as they would like. So it didn't do all of the Group U events of the weekend. In fact, the Group U's were were unfortunately thin on the ground.
That's because most of them were over at Malala.
Well, yeah.
You had a really, really good turnout of historic sports sedans at Malala once again, including the Thompson Volkswagen replica. That was finally Peter Fowler got it out and about, and it didn't catch fire, I believe, and it looked really good. The photos that I saw there. They will be in action at Winton for the Festival of Speed, not for the May meeting coming up, but the Festival of Speed, which happens at the end of August. I believe the sports sedans, historic sports sedans, will be back there. And if you see Mr. Trent, I was asking, just put in a plug and say, could you bring that Jag down to the one of the historic sports sedan meetings as well, because that's one we're missing. That one. It's everything else is there at the moment, and more to come. There's a lot of sports sedans, a lot of historic sports sedans are being either rebuilt or recreated right now. We saw on the weekend Charlie Milner's old HB Tirana, the V8 HB Tirana, that was revived and made an appearance. Mick Motorosso's Escort. Also came back. If Richard Catslow's still there, perhaps you could find your own RX-7 and bring that back. That might be that's probably eligible now. Keith Carling was there with his RX-7.
With those, yeah.
Yeah, so he was. Yeah, so a really good turnout of the historic sports sedans.
Oh, that Escort was incredible. I remember seeing it. You'd never get away with building a car like that these days. Your legs are wrapped around the motor and you're almost hanging out the side of the window to drive it. Yeah, those were the days.
The RS6000.
Yeah.
Although, hang on, this would have been the original. This the Mark 1 or the Mark 2?
That's the Mark 1. This is
Mark 1.
The Mark 2 was racing. Miles Bond had the Mark 2, right. But now he's recreated the Mark or rebuilt the Mark 1. So the Mark 1 with the BDA or whatever it was powered by, or BDG. That's what he was running on the weekend, and then he also had the what eventually turned into the V8 powered, the Chev powered car as well. Also, speaking of sports sedans, up at Winton for the New South Wales state round. The New South Wales State Championship came down and had a round at Winton. Unfortunately, very, very small turnouts in most of the categories, including the sports sedans. But Francis Habib had his ex Bob Gill Falcon there, and it looks nothing like it did when Bob had it. And by the way, I think I'm not sure if I mentioned it, but RIP to Bob Gill, who unfortunately we lost last week. One of the great colourful characters of Victorian motorsport. There would be very, very few local drivers over the past sort of 15 to 20 years who didn't get their competition license sitting alongside Bob Gill at a reserve license trial one Friday afternoon at Sandown or Phillip Island or something. So So our condolences to the friends and family of Bob Spinner Gill, the man they call Spinner, and he had some amazing cars in his collection, which went up for sale this week, including the Lola. We did the story on the Lola, the ex-Group C World Endurance Championship Lola that he had sitting around basically for years and years. With the plan, when we spoke to him, the plan was for him to turn it into a road car. That's what he wanted to do. He wanted to turn that, which horrified the purists. When we ran that, I had all sorts of emails from all sorts of people around the world saying, "Oh my God, he can't be serious." It's like, he was.
Was it the Terry Hook T600?
It was the sister car to that. This was the car that came out for Santa. There were two of them. Terry Hook got one, and Bob got hold of the other, and never raced it. Of course, Terry put the Chev into the back of his car and raced it. Bob's car, I think from memory, had the Cosworth in it, and he sold the Cosworth. And the plan was basically to stick because a big Ford man, it was to stick a 351 in the back of it and somehow turn it into a road car. Because as Bob said in his own inimitable way, just imagine the birds you could pull going down bloody Lygon Street with that on a Saturday night, eh?
Was that the very Lola which had an adult toy sitting on it when we were in the shed?
Bob had an interesting. Bob had an interesting. So which we won't talk about. Okay, we might just leave that at that side of Bob's personality, particularly one day when he showed highlights of his racing career at a Phillip Island Auto Club family day, and then it got to the end of the videotape. Bad move.
Should have taped over that one.
Wasn't a fresh video.
Wasn't a fresh video cassette. But anyway,
we had some other sports sedans out and about actually, because the weekend prior to that we had state championship running at Queensland Raceway, so there was the Queensland Sports Sedan Championship were there. There was around 5 proper big bangers there, like I guess Tony Cox's Saab 9.3, the ex-Hossack car, which acquired a Dodge NASCAR engine along the way. Coxie's still running that and you might remember Jeff Barnes of Pontiac Firebird
yes.
fame and Chev Monza
Chef
before that.
Monza, yeah.
Yeah, Jeff is essentially Coxie's crew chief. So also Tim Tritton was out with his Honda Prelude, which is a familiar car to Victorian sports sedan fans. It's an ex-Victorian car.
Oh, is that Dean Games? Is that Dean Games' old car?
It's
Might
orange,
be.
if that helps.
Yes, that would be Dean's car, which dominated. In fact, if you go on the In Pit Lane YouTube channel and do a search for sports sedans, I think 2006 or something, something like that. You will see sort of that car dominated sports sedan racing back in the day when we were covering sports sedan racing at the state level. And there's some footage there of Dean racing with Steve Vines in the Cortina, and probably Richard would have been there. Richard Catchler would have been there with the RX-7, and we had quite a few of them. But yeah, Dean's car was very popular and very fast in its day. And I'd heard that it had been sold to somebody, because Dean's running, of course, his Trans Am Corvette these days. But anyway, so yes, thank you, Jimmy. Yes, for some Channel 31 awards. Thank you very much. Yes, I did get some Channel 31 awards, so thank you for that. We actually stole it out. The presentation was very funny, because they said to me on last Tuesday, they said, "Oh yeah, there's going to be a bit of a presentation on the show, so like a bit of a surprise. I'll just let you know." And of course, nothing happened. So we were waiting. I said, well, there was supposed to be a presentation of this award that never came through. And a couple of crew members sort of said, I think it's in the office, and they've either forgotten about it or they've just gone, oh, it's too late to wait. We won't bother. Come back and do it some other day. So I think it is highly appropriate that the award was presented to me by a member of the crew in Louis, who he handed it to me, and as a result of basically stealing it from the offices of RMI TV. So
yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
The manager of RMI TV came in last night, or on Wednesday. I saw him on Wednesday, and he came and he said, "Oh, now we've got something for you." And I went, "No, you haven't." What? I said, "No, yeah. Oh no, we've got an award to give you." I said, "No, I've already got it. Sitting at home."
Stole it.
Yeah, we stole. We stole, and I think that is highly appropriate for In Pit Lane. So, but anyway, thank you very much. It was a great on. So, thank you very much to the Australian Community Television Hall of Fame for what it's worth. There's about 6 of us in there. We were the first the class of 24, the first inductions, and it's a very nice little bit of recognition for all of the hard work over the years. So thank you very much to everybody. And people were very nice. Lots of people were very nice online as well. So thank you for all of that. Hey, listen, we will that's just puts us out. You've got something, one more thing, Mark?
Oh yeah, there was just another sports sedan I didn't quite get to. The ex Brian / Garth Walden Commodore has shown up here in Queensland, which was Tony Hubbard car prior to that.
Oh, right.
When the car was first built, it had the drivetrain out of the Big M Jim Richards Falcon.
Yeah. There's a car I'd like to see them. I'd like to see them bring back for the. Don't know what happened to that. So because Tony had it. It was very badly damaged, of course, in that big crash at Adelaide. So I'm not sure whether that was the end of it or not. When I see Tony, I must ask him if he knows what happened to it.
I believe it's in the process of being restored, and that's why the drivetrain didn't stay with the Commodore, for example, when it went to the Waldens.
Well, that'd be great, because that was a car that I think it was John Riordan built built there. Wasn't, I don't think there were. I'd like to find out more about that car. That Falcon looked very low and very aerodynamic, particularly at the front. But
It had a
we might
really
find,
weird setup
yes,
with the gearbox in particular, which I think was a carryover from the Sid Chrome Mustang. But yeah, no,
yeah.
there was
So
some.
we'll find out more about that. But the Francis I did with Bob Gill's car looks absolutely amazing now. Done a lot of work. Riverside Racing, Liam Hill and the team out there have done a lot of work with them. I'm hoping to do a story on that when we finish. We finish up in the studio at the end of this month. But so we're not going too far because that'll give me the time to go out at my leisure and catch up on individual cars and also do a few longer form interviews with a few people before we come back for the new series coming up. And also, as I said, we're hoping to be involved. I can't say too much at the moment. There are some big live streams coming up, which has sort of been signed. But as I can't sort of announce it yet because a lot of the people don't know themselves that it's going to happen. But yes, there is some big live streams that won't be part of In Pit Lane. We're going to be sort of behind the scenes, sort of pushing a few buttons and twiddling knobs and waving cameras around and all the rest of it. But we've been sort of brought in on that as well. So some good news there. Later on in the year, and we'll tell you about as soon as we can. Okay, everybody, we better get the hell out of there. The hour is up. We'll see you next week on Full Course Yellow. Remember, tomorrow night on In Pit Lane, 9:30, Channel 31. Suzanne from the Victorian Flag Marshalling Team, and also fabulous music tomorrow night. Magdalia is her name. She came in and she just blew us away with her voice. She was just very quietly spoken, and boy, she wasn't quiet when she opened her mouth and started singing. But yeah, really fantastic. So Magdalia joining us tomorrow night as our music guest. And as I said, coming up in 2 weeks' time on In Pit Lane, the CEO of Motorsport Australia, Sunil Vora, will be joining us, as well as Gen 2, a band that we had on many years. They've now become quite famous. They've toured the world. They've had #1 albums on the heavy metal charts on Spotify right around the world. And they came on a few years ago, and they contacted me just recently and said, "Hey, we're on a bit of a break at the moment. Would you like to just come in and do a couple of songs?" And I was like, "Oh, yes, thank you." So they'll be in a couple of weeks' time on the same show with Sunil. So I hope, Sunil, if you're watching, I hope you like heavy metal. Doesn't matter either way, you're getting it. Okay. We'll see. Phil obviously knows Magdalia. Magdalia is magic. Yes, very much, Phil. Yeah. She was fantastic. Yeah, she's up from our way. And she was awesome. Yeah, absolutely awesome. So watch that tomorrow night on the In Pit Lane YouTube channel. Okay, everybody, we'll see you next week. Until then, good night. See you later.
Good night.
Bye-bye.